You're overreacting, Daisy. That's what you do. You find a problem and you make it everybody's crisis. That was Michael, my husband of 9 years, standing in our kitchen in Westfield, Ohio, still in his work clothes, tie loosened, looking at me like I was the most exhausting thing in his life. I'd asked him a simple question. Why was there a second phone in his gym bag? That was it. That was all I asked. And instead of answering me, he did what Michael Riley always did. He turned it around, made me the problem, made me small. And God help me, for about 30 seconds, it worked. I actually stood there wondering if I was overreacting. Then he grabbed his keys and walked out. I heard his car pull out of the driveway. I stood in that kitchen for a long moment, staring at the floor, hands cold. Then something shifted in me, something quiet and final. I went back to that gym bag. Michael and I met when I was 26. He was charming in that easy, low-effort way that reads as confidence when you're young and reads as something else entirely when you're older. He had a good job in corporate insurance, a clean apartment, a family that seemed tight-knit. His mother, Jennifer Baker, she kept her maiden name, always made a point of that. She hugged me the first time we met and said, "We've heard so much about you." I believed her. We got married 2 years later, bought a house in Westfield. Quiet street, good neighbors, 2-car garage. I worked as an office manager for a dental group. Michael traveled for work 3, sometimes 4 days a week. Columbus, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. He always had an explanation, always had receipts if I asked, which I rarely did because I trusted him. That's the thing about being a trusting person. Nobody warns you it can be used against you. The second phone was a Samsung, cheap, prepaid, no lock screen. I almost put it back, I want you to know that. My hands were shaking, and part of me was screaming to just put it down and go to bed and forget I ever saw it. Because some part of me already knew that what was on that phone was going to end my life as I knew it. I opened it anyway. The most recent text thread was saved under one letter, M. The last message was sent 3 days ago. Brought Amy to her checkup today. She looks just like you. Doctor says she's perfect. I read it 4 times. My brain kept sliding off it like it was written in another language. Amy. A child's name. I scrolled up. The thread went back 2 years. 2 years of messages. Birthday plans, grocery lists. Can you pick Christopher from practice? He has a game Saturday. Morgan says hi. I miss you. I'll be there Thursday. Don't tell anyone. You know why. Morgan. Christopher. Amy. A woman. A son. A daughter. My husband had a family. I sat down on the floor of our bedroom closet. I don't remember deciding to do that. My legs just stopped working. I sat there in the dark with that phone in my hands, and I thought about every Thursday Michael came home smelling like someone else's laundry detergent, and I told myself I was imagining things. Every Christmas with his family, when Jennifer would look at me across the dinner table with this expression I could never quite name. Every time his brother Declan Burke made some comment that landed a half-second too flat and then laughed it off. They knew. That thought didn't arrive slowly. It hit me all at once like a door blowing open in a storm. Jennifer knew. Declan knew. I didn't know how many others, but someone in that family had looked me in the face every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner for 9 years, and smiled and said nothing. I stayed on that closet floor until the sun came up. Michael came back around 7 a.m. I heard his key in the lock. heard him drop his bag by the door the way he always did, heard him come up the stairs. I was sitting on the edge of the bed. The phone was on the nightstand. He saw it the moment he walked in. His face didn't collapse like I expected. He didn't panic, he didn't fall apart. He just stopped in the doorway and looked at it. And then he looked at me, and something moved across his face that I can only describe as calculation. "Daisy, how old is Christopher?" My voice was steady. I don't know how. He closed his eyes. "How old, Michael?" 7. 7 years old. My husband had a 7-year-old son. And Amy, 14 months. I nodded, kept nodding like my head was on a loose hinge. "Does your mother know?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I picked up the phone, stood up, walked to the door. He stepped aside. I don't know if it was guilt or shock that made him do that, but he let me walk right past him. "Daisy, we need to talk about this. You can't just—" "I'm not talking to you today. You're not being rational." I stopped, turned around, looked at him standing in our bedroom in the house I helped pay for, next to the bed I shared with him for 9 years, and said the only thing that felt true. "You should call a lawyer, Michael, because I already know I'm calling a lawyer." I walked down the stairs, got in my car, and started driving. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be in that house for 1 more minute, because if I stayed, I was going to do something I couldn't take back. And I needed to be smart. I needed to stay smart. Because I was starting to understand that whatever was coming next wasn't just about Michael. It was about all of them.
Daisy, sweetheart, you need to calm down before you do something you can't undo. That was Jennifer Baker, Michael's mother, calling me sweetheart like she had any right to. I'd driven 40 minutes without thinking and somehow ended up parked outside a coffee shop in Morrow County, staring at my phone. Jennifer's name kept lighting up the screen. 7 missed calls in 2 hours. I let them all go to voicemail. On the 8th call, I picked up. That was her opening line. Calm down, like I was a child throwing a fit. Like I hadn't just found out my husband had 2 kids with another woman while I slept in his bed every night thinking I had a marriage. "Jennifer," I kept my voice flat, "did you know?" Silence. Not the silence of someone caught off guard, the silence of someone choosing their words. "It's complicated, Daisy. These things are never black and white." I hung up. I sat in that parking lot for a long time, long enough to watch the morning crowd cycle through, people getting coffee, getting on with their lives, completely unbothered. I envied every single one of them. I opened my phone and did something I probably should have done years ago. I started going through Michael's public life, his LinkedIn, his Facebook, which he barely used, the corporate insurance firm's staff directory. Then I searched Morgan. I didn't have a last name, but I had Westfield, Ohio, and I had Christopher, and I had a 14-month-old named Amy. It took me less than 20 minutes. Her name was Morgan Reeves. She lived in Denton, 43 miles from our house. She had a Facebook profile set to semi-public. In her profile photo, she was laughing at something off camera, dark hair, pretty in an unguarded way. In her cover photo, and this is the part that made my stomach drop through the floor, she was standing in front of a house I recognized. It was the lake house. Michael's family lake house in Delroy. The one Jennifer hosted every 4th of July. The one I spent 9 summers at, grilling out, playing cards, acting like I belonged there. Morgan Reeves had been to that lake house. I scrolled her photos with my hands shaking. There were no photos of Michael. She was careful about that, or someone had told her to be. But Christopher was there, a little boy with Michael's exact jaw, Michael's exact ears, grinning at the camera on what looked like a dock. And in the background of one photo, blurred but unmistakable, Declan Burke, Michael's brother, holding a beer, head turned just enough that you could almost say it was someone else. Almost. I need to tell you about Declan because you need to understand who I was dealing with. Declan Burke was 4 years older than Michael, and he ran the Riley family the way some men run a crew, not loudly, quietly. He was the one who decided what got talked about and what got buried. He was the one who handled problems. When Michael's father got sick and the medical bills got complicated, Declan handled it. When there was a dispute with a contractor on the lake house renovation, Declan handled it. He had this way of standing in a room that made you feel like he was always one step ahead of whatever you were about to say. I used to think that was just confidence, leadership. I understood now it was control. Declan knew about Morgan, had known probably from the beginning, and I would bet everything I had left that he was the one who helped Michael keep it clean, kept the two lives from ever touching, kept me exactly where I was, grateful, trusting, and completely in the dark. I drove home around noon. Michael's car was gone. He'd taken a bag, I could tell. The closet was slightly off, the way it looks when someone pulls something out in a hurry. He'd gone somewhere to regroup, to figure out his story. That was fine. I needed the house empty. I went straight to his home office. Michael was meticulous with his workspace. Everything filed, everything labeled. He used to joke that his brain only worked when his desk was clean. I used to think that was enduring. Now I understood it was a habit of a man who had a lot to keep straight. I went through everything. Files, folders, the locked drawer he kept paperwork in that I never touched because I respected his privacy. I found the key in the lining of his laptop bag, taped there with a strip of electrical tape, small enough that you'd never find it unless you were looking. The drawer had 3 sections: tax documents in the back, insurance folders in the middle, and in the front, a manila envelope with no label. Inside was a lease agreement, a rental property in Denton, Michael Riley listed as the leaseholder, monthly rent paid from an account I had never seen. The lease started 8 years ago. 8 years. Christopher was 7. Michael had set up that apartment before his son was even born. He had planned this, built it like a second life that ran parallel to ours, clean and separate, never meant to intersect. I sat back in his chair and I thought about 8 years of Thursday nights, 8 years of business trips, 8 years of Jennifer looking at me across the table at Christmas. And then I thought about something else. The lease was co-signed. I looked at the signature line, Declan Burke. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked it up anyway because I was past the point of caution. "Is this Daisy?" The voice was a woman's, young, uncertain. "Yes? Who is this?" A pause. "My name is Morgan. I think we need to talk." The floor didn't fall out of my feet. It was more like a slow tilt, the whole room going sideways by a few degrees. "How did you get this number?" "Michael gave it to me, a long time ago. He said if anything ever happened, if something went wrong, I should call you." I closed my eyes, breathed. "He told you to call me." "He said you were the only honest person he knew." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I didn't know he was married. I need you to know that. I didn't know until 6 months ago." 6 months. She'd known for 6 months and said nothing. I didn't know what to do with that yet. I didn't know if she believed her, but something in her voice didn't sound like a woman running a con. It sounded like a woman who was just as trapped as I was. "Where are you?" I said. She told me. I grabbed my keys.
I thought he was going to leave you. He told me he was going to leave you. Morgan Reeves said at the moment she opened the door. Not as an attack, as a confession, like she'd been holding it in so long it just fell out of her. She looked younger in person than her photos, 29, maybe 30. She had dark circles under her eyes and a baby on her hip, Amy, 14 months, chewing on the collar of her mother's shirt. Behind her in the hallway, I could see a little boy sitting on the floor with a tablet, Christopher, Michael's son. He looked up at me for half a second with Michael's eyes, and then looked back at his screen. I stood on that doorstep in Denton, Ohio, and I made a decision. I was not going to fall apart in front of this woman. Not today. Can I come in? The apartment was small, clean but worn, the kind of place where the carpet was vacuumed but the walls hadn't been painted in 15 years. There were kids' drawings on the refrigerator, a stack of bills on the counter, a laundry basket by the couch that hadn't been put away yet. This was not the apartment of a woman being taken care of. I sat down at her kitchen table. She put Amy in a high chair and poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if I wanted one. I didn't stop her. "Start from the beginning," I said. She did. She met Michael 7 years ago at a conference in Columbus. She was 22, just out of school, working her first real job. He was polished, attentive, said all the right things. He told her he was separated, that he and I, that me, had been living like roommates, that the divorce was just a formality, that he was waiting for the right time. She believed him. "I know how that sounds," she said. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "Just keep going." When she got pregnant with Christopher, she panicked. She told Michael she couldn't do it alone, that she needed to know where things stood. He showed up with a lease, a bank account set up in her name, and a story about why the timing wasn't right yet. His mother was sick. His father's estate was complicated. Soon, he kept saying. Soon. Then Amy came, and soon turned into never, and Morgan started asking harder questions. 6 months ago, she found a photo, not a suspicious one, just a photo that came up when she was helping Christopher search something on Michael's phone. Our anniversary dinner. Michael and me at a restaurant in Columbus, dressed up, smiling. He looked happy, not trapped, not miserable, happy. She confronted him that night. He told her the truth. Not all of it, just enough. That yes, he was still married, that it was complicated, that he loved her but needed more time. She threw him out. He came back 3 days later, with flowers, with a whole speech, and She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I have 2 kids, Daisy. I have no family in this state. His brother, Declan, was the one who helped me get this apartment, helped me get Christopher into school. I didn't have a backup plan." There it was. Declan again. "Declan helped you directly," I said. "From the beginning, he knew everything. He was the one who found this place when I was pregnant the first time. He said he was helping Michael do the right thing." She laughed, but there was nothing warm in it. "I thought that meant Michael was going to leave you eventually. Now I think it just meant Declan was managing the situation." Managing the situation. Keeping Morgan stable and quiet in Denton, keeping me comfortable and blind in Westfield. 2 women on 2 ends of a 43-mile stretch of highway, both of us thinking we understood our lives. "Has Jennifer ever contacted you?" Morgan's expression shifted. Something careful came into her face. "She came here once, about a year ago. Christopher was at school. She sat right where you're sitting." Morgan looked at the chair like she was still seeing it. "She told me that what Michael and I had was real, that she considered my children her grandchildren. She brought gifts for the kids. Nice ones." "And?" "And she told me that some things were better left as they were, that a divorce would hurt everyone, especially the children, that stability was the most important thing." Morgan met my eyes. "She never once mentioned you by name. You were just the situation." I thought about Jennifer calling me sweetheart that morning. These things are never black and white, Daisy. My hands were steady. I was surprised by that. "Morgan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She nodded. "That bank account Michael set up, the monthly deposits, is that still happening?" "Yes." Do you know where the money comes from?" She shook her head. He said it was a private account, separate from his main income. I thought about the lease in the locked drawer, the co-signature. I thought about Declan, who had a construction business, who had accounts Michael could have quietly funneled money through for years without it ever touching our joint finances. I had a forensic picture starting to form, and it was bigger than I had expected. "I'm going to need you to share everything you have," I said. "Texts, deposit records, the lease documents, everything Declan ever sent you or signed." Morgan stared at me. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to find out exactly how much my husband hid and exactly who helped him hide it, and then I'm going to make sure every single one of them answers for it." She was quiet for a moment. Amy banged a spoon on her tray. Christopher laughed at something on his tablet. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life built on top of a lie. "If I help you," Morgan said slowly, "Declan will find out. He has a way of finding things out." "I know." He doesn't threaten people directly. He just makes things difficult. He made my last landlord cancel my lease when I tried to move to Cincinnati without telling Michael. I didn't even know it was him until afterwards. I felt the anger move through me, slow and cold. Not hot, not shaking, cold and clear like water. "Morgan," I leaned forward. "He has already done the worst thing he can do to me. There is nothing left for him to take. But you," I glanced toward Christopher, "you need legal protection for yourself and for your kids. That's what I'm going to help you get." She looked at me for a long time. I don't know what she was looking for. Maybe proof that I meant it. Maybe proof that I wasn't going to flip the table and make everything worse. Whatever she saw, it was enough. She got up and went to the bedroom, came back with a shoebox, set it on the table between us. "Everything's in there," she said. "Every document, every wire transfer confirmation. Declan signed half of them." I lifted the lid. The box was full. I drove home as the sun was going down. My mind was running through names, numbers, the shape of what I was dealing with. I needed a lawyer, not a general practice attorney, a divorce attorney who knew how to chase hidden assets. I needed to move fast before Michael had time to start moving money. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the dark car for a moment. Then I looked up and saw a light on in my house. I hadn't left any lights on, and Michael's car was still not there. I got out slowly, walked to the front door. It was unlocked. I always locked it. I pushed it open. Declan Burke was sitting on my couch. He looked up at me the way you look at someone when you've been waiting long enough that the waiting itself was a message. "Hey, Daisy," he smiled. "We should talk."
"You should sit down. You look tired." He said it like he was doing me a favor, like he hadn't just broken into my house and made himself comfortable on my couch with his jacket folded over the armrest and a glass of my whiskey on the coffee table. My whiskey, from my cabinet. I didn't sit down. I stayed in the doorway with my keys still in my hand, and I looked at Declan Burke and I understood for the first time in 9 years exactly what he was. Not Michael's big brother, not the family fixer, a predator who had spent nearly a decade managing me like a variable in someone else's equation. "Get out of my house." "Daisy." "I'm not asking twice, Declan. Get out." He leaned back, relaxed, crossed one ankle over his knee like we were having a casual conversation. He was a big man, broad through the shoulders,
the kind of physical presence that was probably meant to remind me of that. "I just want to talk, that's all. No drama." He spread his hands. "Michael's a mess right now. He's at my place. He's not thinking straight, which means someone needs to. That someone isn't you." See, I think it is. Because here's the thing, Daisy. You went to see Morgan today. I didn't answer. "I'm not angry about that. I understand why you did it. You needed to see it for yourself." He picked up the whiskey glass, set it back down without drinking. "But Morgan, she's fragile. She's a young woman with 2 small kids, and she doesn't fully understand how these things work. Whatever she told you, whatever she handed you in that shoebox." He let that land. I kept my face still. "She's scared," he continued, "and scared people make decisions that hurt themselves more than anyone else. I'd hate to see her lose that apartment, lose that stability she has right now, for the kids especially." There it was, wrapped in concern, delivered gently, but unmistakable, a threat against a woman with 2 children who had already been threatened by this man once without ever knowing it was him. "Are you threatening Morgan? In my house tonight?" "I'm expressing concern." "Declan." I stepped fully inside, let the door close behind me. "I have a shoebox full of wire transfers you co-signed. I have a lease with your name on it. I have 9 years of a financial arrangement you helped structure and maintain." I watched his jaw tighten, just slightly. "You're smarter than Michael gave you credit for." "Most people are." He stood up, slowly, deliberately, the way men do when they want you to register their size. I didn't step back. "Here's what I actually came to say." The friendly tone was gone now, just flat and direct. "Michael is willing to be fair. The house, the accounts, a clean settlement. Nobody needs to dig into finances that are going to get complicated and ugly for everybody. You walk away whole, Morgan and the kids are taken care of, and this stays between the people it involves." "And Jennifer, does she walk away whole too?" Something moved across his face. Irritation. He hadn't expected me to come at his mother. "Leave her out of this." "She sat in Morgan's kitchen a year ago and told that woman to stay quiet and stay put for the sake of stability. She's in this, Declan. She made herself part of it." He picked up his jacket, put it on slow, button by button, getting himself back together. When he looked at me again, his eyes were flat. "You're about to make this very hard on yourself." "I've been surviving hard my whole life. I'm good at it." He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. "Michael said you'd be like this, said once you got an idea in your head there was no reasoning with you." He glanced back. "I used to defend you, said you were just independent, principled." He paused. "Funny how that works out." He left. I listened to his car start, listened to it pull away. Then I walked to my kitchen, poured his whiskey down the drain, washed the glass, and sat down at the table. My hands were shaking. I'm not going to pretend they weren't. Declan Burke in my living room at night was a different thing than Declan Burke at a holiday dinner. The mask was off now, and what was underneath it was not a man who was going to let this go quietly. I picked up my phone and called Louise Murphy. Louise was my oldest friend. We'd known each other since our mid-20s, worked at the same company before I moved to the dental group. She was sharp, practical, and she had gone through a brutal divorce 3 years ago that had taught her more about asset protection and family law than most people learn in a lifetime. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything, all of it, start to finish, without stopping. When I was done, the line was quiet for a second. Okay, she said. First thing tomorrow morning, you're calling Cheyenne Mercer. Who is that? The best divorce attorney in this part of Ohio. She handled my case. She doesn't lose, Daisy, and she is going to love this. Louise, don't argue with me. You said Declan co-signed a lease and wire transfers. That's financial conspiracy to conceal marital assets. That is not just a divorce case anymore. That is potentially fraud. Her voice was steady and certain. You have a shoebox. You have Morgan. You need Cheyenne. I wrote the name down. One more thing, Louise said. Change your locks tonight. Don't wait until morning. I looked at the front door. At the lock, Declan had opened without a key, which meant either Michael had given him one or he'd found another way in. Yeah, I said, already ahead of you. Cheyenne Mercer's office was on the fourth floor of a building in downtown Columbus. She was in her mid-40s, natural hair, reading glasses pushed up on her head, the kind of woman who listened without interrupting and took notes in a handwriting so small and precise it looked like a different language. I laid everything on her desk: the shoebox, the photos I'd taken of the lease, screenshots of the texts from the prepaid phone, my account of Declan's visit. She went through it in silence, didn't react, just read. When she was done, she took her glasses off her head and set them on the desk. Your husband has been maintaining a second household for 8 years, using funds that should be considered marital assets. His brother facilitated and co-signed documents related to that arrangement. That gives us fraud, concealment, and potentially conspiracy, depending on how far we want to push it. She looked at me directly. How far do you want to push it? All the way, I said. She almost smiled. The visit from the brother concerns me. He came to your home uninvited, accessed it without permission, and made statements that can reasonably be interpreted as intimidation and veiled threats against a third party. I want you to write that all down tonight, exact words, exact time, everything. That becomes part of the record. What about Morgan? Cheyenne nodded slowly. If she's willing to cooperate, her documentation is significant. But I want to be clear with you about something. She folded her hands on the desk. Morgan Reeves is not your enemy. What happened to her is not the same as what happened to you. She was targeted when she was 22 years old, and she's been financially controlled ever since. She paused. The people who made choices here are Michael Riley and Declan Burke. Don't let them redirect your anger at the wrong person. I thought about Amy on Morgan's hip, Christopher on the floor with his tablet, 2 kids who didn't ask for any of this. I know, I said. I know that. Good. She picked up her pen. Then let's talk about what we're going to take. I left her office 2 hours later with a legal pad of notes and a retainer agreement signed and dated. The late afternoon sun was cutting low across the Columbus skyline, that specific October light that makes everything look sharp and a little raw. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Daisy, it's Michael. I need you to hear me out. Please, before this goes further. There are things you don't know yet, things about my family you need to understand before you make a decision you can't undo. Meet me, anywhere, you choose, just the 2 of us. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Cheyenne, and then I texted back 4 words. Talk to my lawyer. I put the phone in my bag and walked to my car. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't even angry in the hot, shaking way I had been that first morning on the closet floor. What I felt now was something colder and more focused. I had the documents, I had the attorney, I had Morgan. What I didn't have yet was the full picture of where the money went and how far back the deception ran. But Cheyenne had said something in that office that I couldn't stop thinking about. We subpoenaed Declan's business accounts in Discovery, and I think what we find there is going to be bigger than a hidden apartment. Bigger than a hidden apartment. I sat in the car and stared at the steering wheel. What else had Michael buried?
Daisy, please, just let me explain. Michael Riley, standing on the front porch of our house in Westfield at 7 in the morning like he still had any right to be there. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes red, wearing the same jacket from 2 days ago. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. Good. I opened the door, but I didn't step back. Cheyenne Mercer is your point of contact, I said. You know that. I'm not here about the lawyers, his voice cracked. I'm here about us. 9 years, Daisy. You're just going to throw that away? I looked at him, really looked at him, and I felt almost nothing. Not rage, not grief, just a clean, quiet clarity. You threw it away, Michael. 8 years ago in a conference room in Columbus. I closed the door. Discovery took 6 weeks. Cheyenne was thorough in the way that people are when they genuinely enjoy their work. Subpoenas went out to 3 banks, Declan's construction business, and 2 shell LLCs registered in Delaware that nobody had told me existed. Michael's corporate insurance salary was real, but running alongside it, fed by client referral fees routed through Declan's business, was a second income stream that had been active for 7 years. Nearly $400,000 moved quietly, systematically, into accounts that paid Morgan's rent, Morgan's car, Christopher's private school tuition, and a savings account in both children's names that Michael had apparently planned to present someday as proof he was a good father. $400,000 that legally, in the state of Ohio, was marital property. Cheyenne put the full accounting on her desk one morning and slid it across to me without a word. I picked it up and read every page. Morgan testified. It took courage I don't think she fully knew she had. She sat across from Michael's attorney in a deposition room in Columbus, Christopher in school, Amy with a sitter, and she answered every question in a steady voice. She brought her own documentation, 2 years of it, organized chronologically, the way someone does when they've been quietly preparing for the moment someone finally asked. Afterward, she called me. "How do you feel?" I asked. A long pause. "Like I can breathe," she said. I understood that completely. Declan tried once more, not in person this time. He had someone call Louise, a mutual acquaintance neither of us had heard from in years, suddenly very interested in whether I might consider mediation instead of litigation, whether a quieter resolution might be better for everyone. Louise told him no in language I won't repeat here. The call didn't come again. Jennifer Baker showed up at Cheyenne's office the week before the settlement hearing, unannounced. She sat in the waiting room for 40 minutes before Cheyenne's assistant told her there was nothing to discuss outside of formal proceedings. She left a handwritten note. Cheyenne read it, set it down, and looked at me.
She says the family would like to handle this privately, that public proceedings will damage people who don't deserve it. Cheyenne paused. She means the children. The children have nothing to do with formal proceedings. Their welfare is between Morgan and the court. Jennifer doesn't get to use them as leverage. Cheyenne added the note to the file.
The settlement hearing was on a Thursday in November. Michael's attorney made a case for reduced asset division based on the argument that a significant portion of the concealed funds had gone toward child support, that Michael had been, in his own irregular way, providing for his kids. Cheyenne dismantled it in under 10 minutes. The defendant did not disclose these children, these accounts, or this arrangement at any point during the marriage, she said. He did not pay child support. He ran a covert financial structure with the assistance of a family member, specifically to avoid disclosure. Reframing concealment as generosity does not change the legal definition of marital asset fraud. The judge looked at Michael over her glasses for a long moment. Michael looked at the table. I got the house. I got my share of the legitimate accounts. I got half the value of the concealed assets, just under $200,000, structured as a lien against Declan's construction business, since that was the vehicle used to move the money. Michael was ordered to establish formal child support payments for Christopher and Amy, through the court, on the record. No more private arrangements, no more money routed through his brother. Official, documented, enforceable. Declan avoided criminal charges by a margin I think he will spend a long time thinking about. His attorney negotiated cooperation in exchange for a civil, rather than criminal finding. He paid a financial penalty. He had to liquidate one of the LLCs. Jennifer Baker got nothing from the proceedings and was mentioned nowhere in the final order. That was the part I thought would bother me. It didn't, because Jennifer's punishment wasn't legal. It was something quieter. I want to tell you about the moment I understood it was over. It was a Sunday, about 3 weeks after the settlement. I was in my kitchen, still my kitchen, my house, my address, drinking coffee and reading. The heat was on, the light was gray outside, and the house was completely quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Louise. Have you seen this? She sent a link to a local Facebook group. Someone had posted about Declan's construction business, a client asking whether anyone else had issues with delayed projects and missing deposits. There were 14 replies. The post was 2 days old. Word travels in a quiet suburb. I put my phone face down on the table and went back to my book. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt like a woman who had walked through a burning building, made it out the other side, and was now standing in clean air. Everything Michael Riley built his double life on, the silence, the management, the careful machinery of control his family maintained for nearly a decade, it didn't survive contact with the truth. That's the thing about structures built on lies. They look solid from the outside, but one honest woman with a shoebox and an attorney and nothing left to lose can bring the whole thing down. I saw Morgan once more before the year ended. We met for coffee in a town halfway between us, neutral ground. She had Amy in a carrier. Christopher was with a friend. We didn't talk much about Michael. There wasn't much left to say about him. She told me she was looking at a place closer to her sister in Indiana, a fresh start, better school district. I told her that sounded right. When we said goodbye in the parking lot, she looked at me for a moment and said, "I'm sorry for my part in it, even the parts I didn't know about." "I know," I said. That was enough. I still live in Westfield. The house is mine, and I like it, and I am not going to let Michael Riley take my address from me on top of everything else. I changed the locks the night Declan broke in, and I never changed them back to anything that key would fit. Some mornings I drive past the house Jennifer Baker lives in on the north side of town. The lights are always on. I imagine her in there with everything she protected and everything she lost. Her sons fractured, her family name attached to a court record, the grandchildren she claimed to love now growing up in a city she'll have to travel to see. She made choices. Every single one of them was a choice. So did I. Mine just turned out better. That's the end of Daisy's story. If this hit the way it was supposed to, subscribe. Every story on this channel is built on the same thing: real choices, real consequences, real women who decided they were done being managed. Leave a comment if you want more.